Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. There I am. Hold on. Should be working. Hope everybody's doing okay. Just as usual, here's our new latest in the series of TA Tuesdays with a combination of on-chain technical analysis. And I will unveil a whole new indicator. But before we jump in, let's get rid of the usual stuff. Math, money, and freedom disclaimer. Of course, not financial advice. You guys know the drill. So the question we have today is, does TA work? And the story is a little bit different than in the past, but the idea is to unveil, does it work in 2022? We saw definitely it worked to a large extent in 2021, but during a very choppy market where markets go down, up, down, all in the same day and have massive fluctuations in any given period, it's interesting to watch. So we'll dig into this. But a lot of the idea behind this was triggered by Bloomberg. Thank you to Bloomberg and the team. They put together a 2022 scorecard where they analyzed the directions of buying and holding stocks versus trading them using TA, using a whole bunch of different technical indicators. I think they used 22 different TA systems, 12 of which delivered more positive results than the returns from buying and holding. And we're going to dig into those. We're going to also unveil a brand new indicator as well for you all. So stick around to the end. We're going to analyze some charts, but we got some news to get through first. So as usual, we'll do the good, the bad, and the ugly framework, starting with the good. Let me know if you like it or dislike it below, and I will change. I work for you guys. So first of all, we saw the biggest ETP inflow ever, mostly in places like Europe and Canada. So Bitcoin backtracked. Again, all gains from last week. We saw an 11% decline over the last 7 days, but that's okay. We'll talk more about the Bitcoin chart in a minute. And Ethereum also followed closely, especially with the ETH BTC correlation. It approaches the March 2020 highs. Now, with all the stuff happening in March, FOMC meeting, absolutely exploding commodity prices, and of course, our black swan over in Europe, ETPs still saw net inflows of about nearly 6,000 Bitcoin in Feb. And leading the global BTC exposure of Bitcoin, ETPs reached an all-time high of nearly 200,000 Bitcoin on February 28th. And coincidentally, this is funny, guess where we saw the strongest growth in ETP growth? Canada. I wonder why. So literally, that means people are beginning to wake up. They see when things go down and they take action as a result very quickly. So let's jump in and see what else is ahead. First of all, gold, and the gold-backed PAC token was rising with gold. Obviously, it has a gold peg, so it's clear it'll do that. But the PAX token has done very well. And kudos to Coin Bureau, who actually has that as part of his portfolio. So interesting to watch. And gold itself blew through that $2,000 Rubicon, which was like an albatross around his neck for the last 11 years. It shot through it today. And the question is, will it ever come back? We'll see. But when you compare the gold action to what happened to nickel, up 146% in 12 days, wheat 37%, oil 27%, gold 5.84%. This is the date since the actual invasion. You can see it's been good, but other things have done a lot better. Bitcoin has been down, but in the past, I've seen whenever gold is strong, Bitcoin lags gold. It's not the immediate gold, but the digital gold actually coincidentally moves a little bit slower than the real gold. So we'll watch this space carefully, but the strength in traditional gold should ultimately drive up the price of real gold. At least it has done so in the past. In other good news, Ethereum fees are at a 6-month low, down to an average of about $15. I still haven't managed to find a $15 ETH fee, but it's out there. Apparently, sorry, slightly dried throat today. So that's more good news for the Ethereum chain, despite all the bad news I've been getting lately. Now, the US and the UK banned Russian oil imports. This did rattle the markets today, and it is amping up the squeeze on Putin. But the question is, how much will that hamper these different countries? So the US now has about 9,000 permissions to drill, both on land and I think offshore, and they're already approved. And the US also has very large oil reserves, and it produces an awful lot of oil itself. It's still, because the cars here are not as efficient as other places, it burns more than it should, but that's all changing slowly, I think, thanks to Elon Musk. Now the UK, I'm not sure. Maybe they can cut a deal with Norway and pull some oil from down there. And they also have some North Sea drilling operations. And we also have OPEC who could come to the rescue, increase production as well. But I'm not sure exactly what they have planned in combination with Putin. So we'll see. But let me be very clear. Inflation is going to go through the roof. I shouldn't laugh, but this is what I've been saying. Even before all of this happened, there's no way it's transitory. We have not seen the impact of the increase in costs of things like fertilizer on food, salary, wage pressure going upwards, all that type of stuff. That's going to hit hard. And that's going to put a lot of pressure on our friends at the Fed this week. What do? The economy is very frail. If they jack rates, they'll kill the economy. I think they're just going to have to put up 25 basis points and continue printing money as they go forward. So that's that news. Now, in terms of hash rate, this is incredible from the block research. It looks like the operating hash rate of all the top US miners in February went through the roof. Now, there is one new player there on the far left. It's CORZ Scientific. People ask why I did not include CORZ Scientific in my previous miner analysis, the one at the beginning of January. And that's because it didn't IPO at that stage, so I didn't have all the public information to make a decision. However, that's different right now. So CORZ Scientific is a beast. Looking at this, you can see their preliminary revenue, I think, in 2021 is about $550 million, making about 60 million in net income. And their hash rate, they are planning to explode to about between 30 to 42 exahash coming online in the next coming quarters. And currently they have about, 12? I can't even read the numbers. 8.2, but they're going to triple that, maybe even quadruple it in very short order. They are making very large investments. The only slight concern I have with these guys, despite having about nearly 6,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet, is the fact that they've got less than a year of cash left. So we will be digging into their financials and seeing exactly if there is a concern. Also, the stock has been a little bit shaky. We'll analyze the chart later, so hang on for that for the CORZ Scientific fans out there. Now, another good news, Bitcoin higher lows are holding. So this is a simple little chart that shows you kind of where the lows began. We had the low on the 24th, which I jumped into. Then we had a vicious low on the 24th of January. We had a second one on the 24th of Feb. But you can see that they're going higher and higher over time. So we had about 33.5, and then we had about 34.6, and now we just bounced off another level. So that we're going to watch that very carefully to see if that increasing higher lows increases, because that's an actual bullish sign. Fingers crossed it will. Fingers crossed the people that are investing in traditional gold will start pumping some money in here too. Now, in more good news, this is the FUD regarding energy usage. It came out yesterday from Masari, and it looks at carbon emissions of Bitcoin compared to other industries. Obviously, tumble dryers is the big story of the day. I think we should ban all tumble dryers and clothes washers, not to mention air conditioning, which uses infinitesimally more electricity, as well as gold mining and everything else. But it's just more of this FUD of how people try and attack Bitcoin. Yes, it uses a lot of energy, but it stores a lot of value as well as we go forward. So the question is, does clothes drying have $1 trillion in value? We'll see. Anyway, Avalanche, their foundation just unleashed another large amount of spending, $290 million, to promote their subnet development. Now, subnets, also called subnetworks, these are validators that can establish their own layer 1 or layer 2s on Avalanche's kind of infrastructure. And they want to do things like help people build out more, maybe games like DeFi Kingdoms, play to earn games, which is a hot area, etc. All the metaverse type stuff. So we'll see where this goes, but that's a large amount of money to fund that investment. So expect a lot of action to be built. And remember as well, incentives drive action and they drive demand for tokens. We're trying to build a model around exactly how that impacts the price. Sorry about this little dry cough today. So let's go to the bad news. Good news is there's not too much bad news today. So first of all, the greed and fear is back at extreme fear. Last week we had greed at 51 and last month fear at 48. So we are right back to where we started. So it's amazing the way it oscillates, but this is going to be important for later for a technical indicator I want to look at. Also, GBTC discount is potentially bottoming around this 28% level. It's incredible that you can buy an asset that has nearly 30% off versus spot. But if you look at this chart carefully, you can see the little red arrow going downwards. The trend has been down, and that is a massive play. However, Grayscale have responded, and they have announced they're going to buy about $250 million back of Grayscale Trust shares. And this could have a short-term impact on the shares, leading to less of an actual discount as we go forward. So we'll watch that carefully. Now, there is a lot of talk that this is the first Bitcoin ETF, simply by virtue of the fact they have 650,000 Bitcoins within their fund, and they should do. But the markets are a little bit skittish right now because they're not reading the positive signs from Gary Gensler that he's going to approve this, hence the 28 near 29% discount compared to NAV. But we'll see what the buyback program does, but that should bring it back to 25 or even 20% discount if they buy sufficient. So we'll see. Now let's look at commodities. We talked a bit about commodities, but this is the Bloomberg Commodity Index, and it's blasting through the roof. It is just all commodities, doesn't matter where you are. It's a number go up technology right now. And the other piece of kind of sort of bad news, but maybe has a bit of a positive spin. This is Biden, who signed clearing the way for the crypto oversight. And thank you to Watson for keeping on top of all our regulatory developments. But the focus of this order is really to direct various agencies to conduct studies and develop regulations around it. So there's different councils like Financial Stability Oversight Council, unfortunately chaired by Janet Yellen, is to examine the effects of digital assets on financial stability and make recommendations. She'd probably say, hey, JP Morgan, why don't you go take care of everything? Then we've got the Treasury and Justice Department looking at crypto use for illicit finance. Good news is they're not going to find too much there. And third, the EPA and the Office of Science and Technology will look at the environmental impact of digital assets. So all in all, not too bad. There will be no Bitcoin ban. There might be some stablecoin regulation, and we'll see. But my only concern is Janet Yellen and what she puts through. Hopefully she has good people giving her good counsel and not to do anything too radical, because she doesn't quite understand the space. She doesn't have the 100 hours or 1,000 hours to research. Okay, let's start with the ugly. Let's go. First of all, Bitcoin. Philippines plans to launch a pilot CBDC implementation. And watch Bitcoin volumes explode in Manila is what I think. Also, India's finance minister expects CBDC to roll out this year. Wow. Well, we said they were going to come fit, fast, and furious. But this is kind of scary. And as the world continues to transform, and that's what we've seen over the last 2 months, yeah. Like, all trust in fiat is just gone. The fiat emperor has no clothes, something I tweeted earlier today. But these CBDCs have to come, because the banks are so antiquated in how they manage things like payments, payment systems, resilience, efficiency are just terrible. I actually had to walk into a traditional bank branch yesterday and had to stand in a line for 20 minutes. I was like, what the hell am I doing here? But I had to shut down an account. So you have to physically go in to shut down an account. You can't just pick up the phone or do it online. It's kind of sad. Anyway, Philippines, a little bit scary for those not getting political, but apparently killed more than 7,000 people. In 6 months, the president encourages murder of things like drug dealers. And, imagine him turning off. I'm not saying, drug dealers should be controlled. Of course, it's a very good thing. But can you imagine how much other outreach that they could have going forward? So again, CBDCs should drive people to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency very quickly. So today, the charts we're going to look at: Microstrategy, CORZ Scientific, Bitcoin, Phantom, Tesla, and Avalanche. So let's jump in. And what I'm going to also do is tie it back to this. This is the Bloomberg article. And I looked at some of their favorite TA indicators and how they compare to buying and holding. So you got the Williams percentage R, the Rex Oscillator, the DMI. I'll talk a bit about exponential moving average. I kind of use them differently in areas. I use MAs and exponential MAs as part of other indicators. So I'm going to ignore that one. Rate of change, I don't use. Fear and greed, I look at all the time. RSI, I use. And Bollinger Bands, I use all the time. And buy and hold, well, is it the year to do that? So we'll see. As I mentioned before, the top systems here, the orange bar indicates where it beat buying and holding if you traded simply off of TA. So let's jump into the first one. This is the Williams percentage R. This is not one that I use. I've been familiar with it for over 20 years, but never one I used. And the percentage R, just to explain for those who might like it, is between 0 and 100, and minus 100, which makes minus 50 the midpoint. And a Williams percentage R cross above the minus 50 signals that prices are trading in the upper half of their high-low range for a given look-back period, which is typically bullish. And conversely, a cross below the minus 50, prices are trading in the bottom half of a given look-back period, which is bearish. That's how it works. I never liked it. I never found it to work. I never found it to give me timely signals. So I don't like it. But what I do like is this one. This is the one I'm unveiling today. This is the Rex Oscillator. So you can see the blue bars below. I won't go into how it's actually calculated here. But if you guys want me to and test it across a whole bunch of cryptos and stocks, I can do that. Let me know. But I found it is a very good indicator for indicating really good bottoms. So for example, if you can see the biggest SL of my life on Microstrategy, I went in hard on January 24th. I literally put all my chips on the table almost. Massive amounts of margin were sucked up into this as well. And you can see the Rex Oscillator was almost at a record low and way outside the Bollinger Band. So I knew, I was like, okay, well, if TA does work, this is the biggest buy signal I've had in my life. Now, weirdly enough, we got back there again just a couple of days later. And I was like, oh shit, maybe I missed the bottom. I didn't actually. It didn't go beneath 330 where we went in. And that's it. And since then, we've also had, just like Bitcoin, higher lows from there. And we're in the middle of the Bollinger Band range. So that is the Rex Oscillator. We'll look at that as well now with Phantom. So this is Phantom and the Rex Oscillator here. I've also put in a green line, which shows you the long-term support level for Phantom. And that's at about $1.36, $1.30, depending on how you draw your line. Now, if you look at the Rex Oscillator, it nailed the bottom back in on the 24th. And again on yesterday and today. Now, there was a lot of news about Andre leaving the team and a lot of concern. But I think at this point, everybody, I would not be selling Phantom. In fact, if I had any money, I'd probably buy some. And not, of course, not financial advice, but I don't see it going below this 130 level right now. Actually, let me check the real-time chart. Funny if I said that and it just tanked. But I think it's at a pretty strong support level. It's 132.2. So not bad. Still flat on the day, but it seems to be holding up at that support level. So again, watch this carefully. It's nice to look at the Rex in combo with Bollinger Bands and maybe layer in RSI as well to get a good indicator. Now let's look at DMI. This is one also I don't use. It just makes me dizzy when I look at it, and I have never been able to make head nor tail of it. But remember, the reason I'm showing you the Directional Movement Index, it is a good momentum indicator. It's just always been too busy for me, and sometimes looking at less indicators is better than looking at too many because you get confusion. But try find confluence with ones you like. And if this is something that appeals to you, go ahead and dig into it. Let me know. But again, I have already too many indicators on my plate. Now let's look at Bollinger Band and Bitcoin. Here, this is just a perfect indicator of exactly how it works so well. So we have the kill zone, synthetic long time, where I was watching MicroStrategy and Bitcoin at the same time on the 24th. Boom, bottom, 33K. Then we had our 34.6K floor, coincidentally, on the 24th as well, also nailed by the Bollinger Band. And then we have the 45K overbought position, again, creeping outside the Bollinger Band. And that is one of my favorite indicators. I always have my Bollinger Band turned on. It's rare I turn it off. So it's a key one for you all out there. Now let's look at Fear and Greed Index. This one, Bloomberg were very positive on it. I don't quite think it's that reliable because there's too much sentiment in there. But it did miss on the, I think, 6th of January when it was maximum fear. It did nail the 24th. Boom. But that was also fueled by a lot of news that was very negative out there. And then, of course, the 24th again of February, it nailed it too. But it went back down there a few days later. And it's down there at that 20 level right now again, like we discussed earlier. But again, just like Bitcoin, it has higher lows as we go forward. And we're not getting that extreme fear of down to 10. It's kind of hovering around 20, which is good right now. So it's not bad. It's always one worth looking at. but not one trade-off, in my opinion. Now let's look at Tesla, Bollinger Bands, and the Rex. So here you see an example of where the Bollinger Bands work and the Rex doesn't. So you can see every time Tesla falls out of the Bollinger Band, that's the time where you snipe. It always kind of mean reverts after it gets overbought. It's been very slow now. But again, we also have that green line, which is kind of ascending support over the longer term. And we'll see where we go. But with all the good news for Tesla coming up, nothing but positiveness for the year. And even, I mean, going back to oil, the escalating oil price and people being hurt by the cost it takes to fuel their vehicles if they've got a long commute to work or whatever. I feel bad for those people. I heard a story that somebody had to buy $100 of diesel to fuel their tank, and before it used to cost $50. So it's like more than doubled in a very short window of time. So hang tough, everybody. But this should also fuel the demand for electric vehicles. And Tesla doesn't need any more demand because you got to wait a year till you get your car anyway. But hopefully with Berlin and Texas going online, that should accelerate as they go forward. Now, CORZ Scientific, again, they IPO'd on the 20th of January. So as I mentioned, it was too late for a recent minor analysis, but we will do another one. I promise you. Hopefully by the end of this month, we look at a ton of numbers and we create ratios on ratios to create our own different ratios. But here you can see the combination of RSI identifies pretty well when to get in and when to get out. Now today we had huge volatility in CORZ Scientific. It dipped hard and it closed really strong, up 7%, I think, and it was down for the day. But the key thing of how I use this RSI oscillator is when the moving average, which is the yellow line, crosses the purple line on an upward movement. That is when it indicates. If that purple line is beneath the 30 and you get the yellow cross, that is a buy signal for me. You don't see it too often, but when you do, it's a very, very good confirmation as we go forward. And finally, Avalanche and Rex. Let's see if this one works. Here, Avalanche, you can see that the Rex indicator works really well. It's like Rex works well for crypto and not so well for equities. But again, in combination with Bollinger Bands, you can see 65 solid support. We had a snipe level down to the 54s, 56s back right before the 24th of January, and pretty solid support at 65. But we are facing, this is why it's important as well, everybody, ladies and gentlemen out there, to look at what's going on with lockup expirations and stuff. So there is a lockup expiring, which could put some excess tokens on the market, which could bring about some selling pressure and keep it down. That might be the reason we are outside the Bollinger Band right now. I wouldn't be jumping in here unless we get down to 65. Then I get a little nibble if I had any cash. Who knows? But again, watch that selling pressure from the recent lockup. So everybody, that is the show for today. I hope you got something from it. Check out the Rex indicator and let me know if you want me to do a deep dive on it and back test it too. Thank you all for being here and have a great, safe evening. Cheers all.